Fuck. I'll have to add this. Okay, no problem. Did you figure it out that it's the Hebrew thing is African Americans and Native Americans and people that are in America, and that Edom is the people in control of the world that profit the most from war? Put themselves in the most controversy. It's so obvious. I don't believe people can't see it, but you're not taught any of the stuff from the Bible. And then you're taught the direct opposite. The Bible's trash and you shouldn't believe it. So it stands to reason that you'd believe all this other shit. It's just a shame. So God bless you all. Have a great day, week, whatever it takes for me to do another video. See you later, guys. Hello. How's everybody doing today? Coffee's empty. That was probably stupid. But that's okay. I got my editor to work pretty good, so I can chop videos and do all kinds of new stuff. Well, some new stuff. I don't have the full editing software yet. Anyway, I'm going to talk about the master race today. Pretty controversial. Evolution, how it works, how it's misconcepted or misconstrued in our society to make you believe something different. I've been discussing all my theories with an AI software lately. And I even went out and bought a stupid little Google thing, but Google's AI is pretty stupid. I've been using the Meta one, and asking it all kinds of questions about all the things that I talk about, and learning so much, but also verifying so many things. And there's a couple of things that I was more sure of than I should have been, and some other things that were just wrong. But mostly all little things that wouldn't add up against me too much. Meta's problem is, from one conversation to the next, it can't remember the last conversation, that AI. So if I prove something to it, it cannot remember that next time as evidence against its software or whatever. But the way I know that I can prove something to it is when I'm wrong, or when I'll say right things and then not bring my argument to a full stance. It'll respond and say, like, here's what you've said, here's what the scientific consensus says, and then it'll say something like, in conclusion, always learned, it's good to think critical, but know your limitations and whatever, and she'll just kind of say, like, drop it, very politely. And then if I say something that's correct, what she'll say is, like, we talked about the school system, and I talked about a class action suit against the school board for presenting false information, even though the laws on the book says that their textbook should be factual and current, and proved a whole bunch of things that they've been spouting since, that have been proved wrong since like the 70s in some cases. And they don't present an alternative theory. They present their theory as if it was fact. And then they use brainwashing techniques, like rather than asking a child, how do you think, write an essay about how you think that the universe came into creation, they say, explain how the Big Bang created the universe, locking the child in to their theory and making them explain their theory to them, basically. I believe, hoping that they'll get new ideas for some of these theories that they come up with. Anyway, uh, so at the end of such a conversation, AI will respond saying um, how to move forward and give you a list of things, the next steps, and then the conclusion will be very positive, and that was an intriguing thought, and this and that. And so basically had it on the flat Earth and had it on young Earth big time a few times, and on smaller universe. But again, I can't remember. I was trying to get it to keep a log of our conversations for when we're having conversations, and it said it could, and then it said it couldn't, and so I don't know. It seems to sometimes when I ask for it to go back, it seems to be able to go back further than it did before. Anyway, so we discussed evolution, and first thing is the second law of thermodynamics, that all things left to their own tend towards chaos or destruction. So a car rots, you're if you leave it out in the field somewhere, it's going to rot really fast. The sun's going to cook the roof and all that kind of stuff, and then trees get old, fall over, die, rot. Animals get old, die, rot. The earth is getting older, and we're noticing that it's not producing the same way that it used to, right? Like deserts are growing, and just all these different little things that it's the whole universe is in decay. And then if you look into the heliocentric model, it's even more so, because like stars are burning out and all kinds of stuff. Now, they talk about an Oort cloud where stars are also being formed and spit out into the universe, and that's where we get new stars from. But it's just a theory, and it's never been proven. And the Oort cloud is so far away that there's no way that we'll ever be able to study it or see it or anything. So it's just a blanket you can throw, sweeping it under the rug kind of thing, right? Where you can't disprove the Oort cloud any more than they can prove it, because how could you, right? Especially if they control what you know, right? So like you're not really seeing what the telescopes see. NASA openly admits that their pictures from telescopes and all the pictures of space and all that stuff comes into them as ones and zeros, and then they got to interpret that into words, and then they give those parameters to a 3D artist, and that 3D artist creates the image. And none of their pictures from space are real. So it just shows that we don't really know what we know. Like everything's just kind of easy to hide that shit. And it makes it easier to hide other things because you don't know. You're not entitled to that information. You can't go to Antarctica. You can't go to the North Pole. You can't fly even over the North Pole. And you certainly aren't flying over Antarctica because it's the outer ring of the Earth, really. But they come up with other reasons that you have to fly crazy routes from the southern hemisphere, where they'll go from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere, gas up, and then go back down to the southern hemisphere. But if you plot that out on a flat Earth map, it's just a straight line. Anyway, I can go on and on about maps, but all things tend towards a chaos. Other evidences of that would be like the tectonic plates. They used to be one plate. And now they're all broken up and shattered, and they've fallen down. And so the whole earth is different from what it was once, right? Because those, in the Bible, it says that those plates were all one plate, and the ocean was under it, and it just had little craters where it popped water up and it flowed in 4 directions. So the whole earth is tending towards like a destruction of chaos. And they'll say it's cycles and all that shit, but again, no evidence of that. They just say that shit. They need that in order for their theory to make sense, right? So anyway, and then we started talking about breeding animals and how mankind we've been breeding dogs to make fighting dogs, or little dogs or big dogs or whatever, sheep dogs, and all these different techniques that we can put into the dogs through breeding processes. And one thing that we notice is that in order to get that, what you do is you have to limit the information in the dog's DNA. So over time, you breed out the tendency of level-headedness or whatever, or you breed out all the small dogs so that they just get bigger and bigger. But in order to do that, you're limiting the DNA strands, so you end up having to do a lot of inbreeding, and then you end up with these big problems. We got German Shepherds are prone to bone dysplasia. Collies and the little mini collies, they get the eye problems and other things. The pug nose dogs, they get breathing issues big time, and all these dogs die young. Whereas if we have a mutt, they're usually way more intelligent, for one, easier to train, more loyal, and they live longer, and they have less health problems in their old age. So knowing all of these things, and then we can look into horses as well, where for the Kentucky Derby, that's a weird way to say it, we breed horses to try to get the fastest horse. Or for workhorses, we breed them to try to get the biggest horse. And, we spent thousands of years with aggressive breeding to try to get the fastest horse. And we've never achieved a cheetah from a horse, right? We've never gotten some new species of horse. They're always horses. They're just different colors, different sizes, and different speeds, different muscle groups enhanced or whatever. So when it comes to humans, we've done the same to ourselves. Over time, we've, especially back in the day, you didn't go outside your own for a wife. You'd go to your uncle and get your cousin to be your wife or whatever, your 5th cousin, your 6th cousin, whatever it would be. But if you were Hebrew, you wanted a Hebrew bride. So it was fine to marry a woman who wasn't bloodline Hebrew later on in the religion, so long as she was in the faith of Judaism. But really, at first, they just picked cousins and sisters and things of this nature, and there was no real big issues with it like we have today. There was probably some issue, but really it wasn't the huge issues we have today until it got so far down the bloodline that now it's like, no, you can't marry your cousin. You certainly can't marry your sister, and have children, because they're going to be messed up. But that's more of a modern thing. That wasn't the way it was before. And so we've done this, and we've ended up with different races that we think are major differences, but they're not. They're just melanin differences and simple things. Again, we're all humans. It's just different looks and different strengths and weaknesses. Just like the fighting dog as opposed to the sheepdog or whatever. And then, but as we go through time, we just keep getting weaker especially as we stick to our race or whatever. So in order to make a so-called master race, to my mind, we need to try to bring all the races of man together. And instead of losing information in the DNA every generation, which is what happens naturally, especially when it's like two white people or two black people or whatever, we would be able to put new information in every generation. And if we kept doing that, and if we could keep doing that peacefully as a people around the world, we will eventually not have races at all. And more importantly, we will have added information to the DNA. Now, I don't know. We'd have to probably do some pretty strategic, strong forced breeding system in order to actually make this make any difference and keep up with the loss of the information with each generation. Because, even so, like two white people come together and they make a baby. The baby has a bit from each DNA, but doesn't have the complete information from either DNA. So that's you'd exponentially lose as you gained. So in order for us to gain more than the loss, we would have to like aggressively push this system, which is arranged marriages, basically. So it's not something that'll ever happen. Like it is our only chance of fighting the sustainability of the human bloodline is to breed within the races, and you're going to get healthier, better children. But you're not going to keep up with the loss, because even though it's a Chinese person and a white person coming together, they make a baby, that baby doesn't have all of the white person's DNA information, and it doesn't have all of the Chinese person's DNA information. But it's got a better chance of getting more information than the baby that was born of two Chinese people or two white people. At least there's some introduction of information there, not just a loss. Now, again, the two white people or whatever that came together, their DNA is not the same, so they have different contributions to add into that new DNA that's going to make, but it's still a loss. It's minute in one generation. It's minute in 5 generations, but over 50 generations, it would be a drastic loss of information. As the gains would be a little bit more dramatic, I guess, at first. And the gain of breeding race out would be a great gain, but whatever. Anyway, what do you guys think about that stuff? I think that's a new way for us to all think of so-called master race theory, and kind of put a positive twist on that horrible word, or at least the connotation that word carries. I don't think I use that word properly. Anyway, that word carries a negative atonement, and so be really nice to put a more positive one on. Anything that we can do small like that to put positive thought onto a negative, rather than just deleting a word out of our vocabulary. Deleting words out of your vocabulary shrinks your world. Knowledge is power. That's another part of why knowledge is power, because every word that you learn is a new understanding of the world, and a new, better way for you to explain yourself and communicate with others or whatever. I should learn some words. um, so now then, the other part of that conversation is the Hebrews, um, gifts of their bloodline and all this stuff. I said it really well to AI, formulated a nice thought on that, where the Hebrews weren't picked by God because they're blessed. They were blessed by God because they were picked. So it's not anything that they had above everybody else. They don't have a higher moral standard or anything like that than anybody else. So they're no different than the rest of mankind. They were chosen as the gas gauge of mankind, so that God doesn't need to look at every individual people on earth. He can look to his people, have them all marked, see how they're being treated on the earth, and know where the earth is, know where mankind stands, know where, how we're treating each other and how we're living and all that kind of stuff, just by knowing where that one people is, right? And then bless them because of that. Said, okay, now I need to preserve you on the earth forever. And I will do that by making sure that the dew of the earth, money, food, all that kind of stuff, follows you. You don't have to follow it. Wherever you settle, the earth's going to be prosperous. It's just going to milk and honey. And so now he also said, I have to protect you. So I'm going to make you strong as a people, like when it comes to fighting, especially if you are under me when you're fighting, like if you have me in your hearts, you're going to be unstoppable. But if you, even without me in your hearts, you're going to be super strong to the other races, so that they don't just wipe you out, right? Especially once they know that you're the jealousy, this, that, the other, whatever, there's a good chance that they'll wipe you guys out. So in order to stop that, I'll make you guys super strong, faster, jump higher, play basketball better, be in all the football leagues, sing music, have more rhythm than everybody else, stuff like that. So knowing that, we should be able to see who the Hebrews are on the earth, right? So, and also we can look to the Hebrews' history, right, and see that they were always wailing out every fucking time. So they're trapped in Egypt. These are just a couple of the examples that I use as my examples, but there's tons. So they're trapped in Egypt, and Moses saying, "Let my people go, let my people go," and they get to the 3 dark nights, and the people are so divided amongst themselves that the Hebrews, during those 3 dark nights, killed a whole bunch of other Hebrews who were still balling out and that wouldn't get on step with the rest of the Hebrews. I don't know, right of them or whatever you could say. But during that time, they were able to kill all of them, have their burial ceremonies for them all, and clean up all the messes. And the Egyptians were none the wiser because they were blind during those 3 days. So they were concerned about other things. And then there was just some Hebrews missing. They didn't, they could have ran away. They could have, this, that, the other, whatever. And so now they're all on one page together during that moment in time. They go through the Red Seas. They see all that stuff. Moses parts the sea for them, and then they get stuck in the desert, and they're pissed off, and they're wailing out again, and they're doing all this shit, and God has to get them bit by the serpent, and they have to remake the tablets because Moses couldn't even walk away for a couple of days and go up on the mountain and talk to God. He comes back down and they've made false idols and cows and they're worshiping them and dancing around naked and doing all this shit. So he destroys the tablets, goes back up and has to re-talk to God and do everything over again. They're not any different than any of the rest of us. We're all fucked up sinners that make mistakes, and their mistakes are punished worse than the rest of us. Because they're that needle. That's also their cross to bear. They get all these privileges and all these rights and all this wealth, and they're also promised that men will want to serve them, in that their leadership will be so just and righteous if they're under God that men will willingly want to be in their servitude. But if they're not under God, and because they fail so much, before Egypt, they failed a bunch of times. And so God curses them and Esau, the brother, at the same time. He deals out a bunch of curses. So Esau's thing was that he'll dwell in the dew of the earth by the sword. So he's going to always, anytime that he's in wealth or money or whatever, he's going to have to fight for it. He's going to have to kill for it, go to war for it. But he'll be really good at that and win and be able to utilize it throughout all of time. And that's kind of how we can know the two brothers apart and the two people. One people has the dew of the earth yielding itself to them, and the other people are going to steal that dew and constantly use war in some way to keep it. So I hope it's becoming obvious to you. I see. I'll stay away from that. So yeah, the Hebrews aren't blessed because they're Hebrews, or no, they weren't blessed by God because they're special. They're special because they were blessed by God. I'll add this. Okay, no problem. Did you figure it out that it's the Hebrew thing is African Americans and Native Americans and people that are in America, and that Edom is the people in control of the world that profit the most from war, put themselves in the most controversy. It's so obvious. I don't believe people can't see it, but you're not taught any of the stuff from the Bible. And then you're taught the direct opposite. The Bible's trash and you shouldn't believe it. So it stands to reason that you'd believe all this other shit. It's just a shame. So God bless you all. Have a great day, week, whatever it takes for me to do another video. See you later, guys. So it does make their bloodline more beneficial because they can play all the sports and play all the music and very talented and gifted, and because the dew of the earth is going to yield itself to them, and if they're under God, men are going to want to serve them and stuff like that, and there'll be a just righteous leadership of man if they all get under God. So, and Esau will rule until the end of times, and then Jacob's rule will come thereafter. And Jacob is the subplanter or heel grabber. That's what his name means, because he had his hand on Esau's heel when they came out of the birth canal. They were fighting to see who was going to be the oldest, and Jacob won, and he was about to go out, and Esau grabbed his mother's heart and said, I'll kill her if you don't let me go first. So Jacob let him go first. And they fought the whole time they were in the womb. And anyways, and then this big fight happened during the birth process. And she goes to Shem and Moses, right? No, Noah. Shem and Noah, and asks them, what the hell's going on with my pregnancy? This baby is freaking out. And they're like, no, you got two babies in there. You know, this is before EKGs and all that shit. They didn't have ultrasounds. So he says, no, you got two babies in there. And the whole earth isn't going to be big enough for them to dwell in peacefully. So how could your womb be? And she goes through a horrible pregnancy. So anyway, that's what Jacob's name means, and that's how quickly his rule will come behind Esau's. And at the end of times, we'll be under Jacob's rule for 1,000 years, and it will be a peaceful, happy 1,000 years of all of mankind under God again in the rebirth of earth. So the way I understand it, he says he's saving up the earth for fire. Basically, the evolutionists are almost correct in their cycles, except there was one cycle, creation, the flood, another cycle, and now there's going to be the fire, the third cycle. And that cycle God will re-establish the earth more to what it was for the first 2,000 years, for our last 1,000. And then we're going to fuck up again for Judgment Day after that 1,000 years of peace. So pretty interesting shit. But yeah, the master race thing, the Hebrews would be a crucial part of that because of their blessings. It's going to help the whole DNA of mankind. But it wouldn't, there isn't such a thing so far. But that would be a good goal for us to try to work toward, though, again, it's all about love and emotion and this and that, so it's not really something that you could push towards so much. Other than having a nice, peaceful melting pot like America was becoming before the new millennia of fear. Interesting how much fear they pushed a lot of fear in the past, climate change, this, that, whatever. But in the 2000s, they did the Y2K, and then and everybody, and then they're constantly coming out with diseases that are going to kill everybody, and then they did the 9/11 and come up with a bunch more diseases, more aggressive ones that they're going to kill everybody with, and then, but not really threatening ones, but make it seem more threatening than it is, right? And now we're finding out that, like, with evidence behind it, people like me already knew this shit. It was kind of obvious if you studied it all and you watch what's going on and you watch interviews with like CIA people and shit like this that are retired, and look for declassified informations that come out after the fact. Anyway, you see that pattern of corruption. I lost my track of thought. Shit, that was a good one too. Oh well. Oh well. Let's just go. Been long enough. What do you think of my crazy master race theory? I think that'll be a good title for the video because of the controversy of the term, especially coming from a fucking old cracker. So, anyways, duh. Um, the Hebrew thing